Well, two things are important in terms of the conference. The one, of course, is that the elections are finished now. We know the leadership. The second part of the conference, which is actually the more important one, is the policy outcomes that we will see. And the policy outcomes also, there are several of them, but the most important ones are the ones on organizational renewal and, of course, the economic direction or so-called economic transformation that the ANC is going to follow for the next 5 years. I think the highlight for me in this conference was the way in which the election took place of the top six. It was a clear victory for Mr. Zuma and his team. They worked very hard at it, and it is clear that the ANC is, with this election and this victory, moving into that of a modern political party where people are lobbying, where they work very hard behind the scenes. And I think it's time for the ANC to adopt a much more open approach to lobbying within the party, rather than this constant denial that people are working behind the scenes, because it is clear to us that they have worked very hard behind the scenes. I think a much more open, transparent ANC is only good for the party.
It was well organized, but it was, in terms of logistics, it was predictable in terms of outcomes and discourse. We had a lot of rhetoric around party unity, around attacking the three pillars of poverty, inequality and joblessness. And we had a lot of very good diagnosis of what the situation is and what the problems are. What we didn't really get was a sense of the how. And it seemed to me that it was a well-managed attempt to appease the kind of fires that are burning on the ground in our communities and among popular citizens. And what's quite unfortunate is that at some point the level of rhetoric is going to wear even thinner. People talk about the next 100 years, and I think that it's important not to be arrogant and overly self-congratulatory, given that the concrete and material conditions of a lot of people haven't improved at all since 1994. The highs, I think, for me, Deputy President Khalima's concession speech, actually, I thought was really gracious and really graceful, which is just like him as well. I thought as well the way that he was acknowledged by both the Deputy President of the ANC and the President of the ANC and the country today was really quite nice. The ovation that he received, I thought that was really lovely. I think the lows would certainly be the whole slate system. I think the kind of inherently combative form of politics that it breeds, the sense in which there are winners and losers, the sense in which the party divisions are an intricate part of the way that people contest the ideas, and I think that that's very unfortunate. Yes. I also think that the other unfortunate aspect was a level of recycling of old ideas, Bulugwane consent. If you've read the reports from Bulugwane, from Stellenbosch, from Mangaung, they read very much almost like one continuous document, which in and of itself is fine, but the solutions don't seem to be coming out very clearly. So that for me was a low. But it's been an interesting week, and it's always an honor to be part of making history.
It was a conference that sent out so many different messages. On the one hand, it was this big demonstration of power of Zuma, but it was simultaneously demonstration of power of the grouping that has been mobilized around him, where so many of us have been talking and have, in our observations of and discussions with delegates, have been noticing that there is not just one ANC. It's really a question of two ANCs here. There's clearly a dominant ANC that is confirmed and affirmed in this conference, and that is a Zuma dominant one. In the closing address a short while ago, we really saw the demonstration of that. He spoke out in terms of unity, quite a powerful message, but I still thought not powerful enough in terms of speaking to those on the ground who have done the type of scorched earth campaign to get him re-elected, and animosity still run high on ground level and in ANC's regions, and the forces of change are quite subdued, were very subdued at this conference, and they still have high levels of trepidation that things will not go so well for them back home in their branches, in their positions. of maybe public service, maybe political life in councils and provinces and so on. And much more needs to be done to do it. So the ANC came across as quite strong, and Zuma came across as very strong in the closing address. But that was just part of the reality. Much work remains to be done. In the next few months, we will have to see, do people retain their positions if they have been mobilizing on the side of the forces of change for Motlanthe? Or could they perhaps be purged? What are their futures on that level? You know, undoubtedly, the day of the executive top 6 nominations brought some of the unexpected moments. When Motlanthe, we all knew that he wasn't in for election, etc. But when he first declined nomination as deputy president to run against Ramaphosa, and in second place when he declined nomination to the NEC. Those were signals that he is seriously reconsidering his position. Subsequently, both President Zuma and Secretary General Gwede Mantashe came out and made statements that indicated some ambiguity, that Motlanthe was probably not going to remain in his position as deputy president of the country. We know that is a space that has not been, no announcement has been made, but a very ambiguous statement there. And the announcement that Kgalema Motlanthe will now head the ANC's political school, I think many people will sigh a sigh of relief, showing that he remains committed to be in the ANC. And perhaps on a lighter note, that will also be his chance to help ensure that the kind of so-called robust, but actually very rough campaigning doesn't become institutionalized in the ANC.
I think in terms of the objectives that the conference wanted to achieve, it was a success. The conference was called in to do a number of things. First was to look at how the organization has performed since Polokwane, both as a party but also in government. And Jacob Zuma, the president, set the stage in his opening address. The second aspect of the conference was also to look at the status of the health of the organization and the state of the organization. And in that, what you saw was a robust admission of some of the weaknesses that the organization is facing. That of factionalism, the abuse of office, and the factionalism, and also the issues of corruption. And the conference felt that these are the issues that the incoming leadership would have to address. Then the third one was about the reviewing of policy. That which are policies that need to be looked at, and in that they looked at some things like the strengthening the issue of discipline and dealing with also the issues of the constitutionalism, the size of provincial executives, branches, as well as the national executive. So from that perspective, you could say that was achieved. And also to set the agenda for the next decade and also for the next 100 years. And of course, what the ANC president and the ANC decided to do is to use certain instruments as guidelines, and one of them is the National Development Plan. So that those were the intentions, and if you look at it, they were achieved. And the last one, which is the most important, or the one that has been covered, was the elective elections for the new leadership. And that we also saw that it was an affirmation of President Jacob Zuma's leadership. And it's very interesting that this affirmation comes after he had been a subject and a target of consistent barrage of attacks by the media, by columnists, by commentators, and even some who were prophesying that come Mangaung, it will be the end of the road. Instead, it became the end of the road of other people. But what is also interesting about this conference, you saw also the re-emergence of some people who had been out of the National Executive Committee of the ANC, people like Tito Mboweni, people like Togo Didiza and Sanki Mahanyele. So there was almost, you could say, a unifying element that was coming, that those people who had almost left the ANC were welcomed back into the stable of the ANC. So that is one of the successes of this organization, or of the conference. Okay. Well, I think the lows was the issue of ill discipline that was seen in the conference, and also that the conference started with questions being raised about the credentials of the people, and also the fact that the members of the ANC are taking the ANC to court. That is not a way to start a conference. And I also think that there were some elements that were using songs that were vulgarizing other candidates, and that is not good for the issue of unity. But in terms of the highs, I think you saw a president who was very confident in opening the conference. The Secretary General was also very confident in giving his report, and at the end they ended on a high note. And what is most important is the unity that was shown at the end when the president indicated that the deputy president, the former deputy president of the ANC, Khalifa Motlanthe, would be assigned a very important responsibility. What is good about that is that the ANC is saying we all win, but what we do is that we deploy our comrades in spaces where we think they can add value. And what it also says is that we do not throw away the resources that we have in our own organization.